Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Tinkerbell, Secret of the Wings. And I know this one is the one that a couple people have apparently been waiting for based on comments and stuff. And I don't know why. I don't. Not because I think it's not worth it. I just don't know what it's about. Based on the title, something with the secret of their wings? I don't know. I assume it has something to do with that. That's the only thing I can think of with the title like that. Otherwise, I have no fucking idea. But yeah, so we're back with another one of these Tinkerbell movies. And once again, I don't know exactly what to expect. These have been surprisingly good, and each one has been better than the last, which has surprised me even more. It's definitely an unexpected situation, as I talked about before and everything in the previous ones. Like, I had heard about these movies well beforehand, but I never was interested in checking them out. Back before I came out and everything, I viewed them as too girly and dumb bullshit like that. Because I was raised into thinking like that, and it's fucking terrible looking back on it. But yeah, I was made to think that, and even after initially coming out in 2017, it just wasn't. It just never seemed to appeal to me exactly. Like I just never thought about even considering checking them out. And then when we finally did, as they started coming up for, donation rewards from Smurf and all, the first one, as we've pointed out, I wasn't as big a fan of. I felt like, even if unintentionally, the message was a little not great. It just didn't handle it as well, and because it had to set up a lot of things, it wasn't that well handled. In terms of its writing, its pacing, its character work. It didn't really allow anything to shine. And while that allowed the future movies to shine a lot more, having all that setup already done, you do have to admit, like, when you have a series of movies, you want the first one to hook the viewers in. That's kind of the point. You want it to hook the viewers in to get their, not only get their attention, but keep their attention. And for little kids and everything, who are the main market audience for these movies, of course, yeah, they'll probably be fine. The little kids are not going to be thinking as much about, like, the depth of the story or characters or anything. I understand that. But I'm watching this as a 30-year-old woman. I'm going to naturally see things in a different light. And I understand that animation is not just for kids inherently, and that any animation, even stuff like this, can appeal to adults. Even though I understand that, as I said, I do understand that this is marketed towards a younger audience. And because of that, they're not, the makers of stuff like this aren't really looking for the adult demographics views as much. They're looking more towards, okay, do the kids like this? Are they gonna buy the toys and shit? It's not like some cartoons which are clearly made to have more of a mature tinge to them, so that all ages can enjoy them, to appeal to a broader audience, even if the main network still wants to market it towards children. Like, you see stuff like Steven Universe, and it's very much like, oh yeah, Rebecca Sugar never meant that to be a kids show. It was meant to be a family show, a show for all ages, for anyone to get into, something that the kids could still get a huge kick out of without having to think too much into it, but still having that depth in there that adults would not only understand but get into, and would allow them to stay entertained and excited and hooked in as well. And I like it when shows can do that. I actually prefer it when shows do that, because it feels like it's, one, appealing to a broader audience, which is always better. Like, no matter what, you should be trying to appeal to a broader audience. You get more views, you get more money. It's like, come on. Just from any kind of marketing or just kind of perspective like that, you want to do stuff like that. Having a series that is directly, specifically for like only kids is kind of detrimental to your business plan, I feel. Unless you're trying to make something like some kind of preschool show like Dora the Explorer, Bob the Builder, stuff like that. It's like, okay, yeah, that's clearly the intent of that, and stuff like that has its specific staying power in its own regard. But like, you try to make something that's for kids, it's like you also want to make it appeal to an older audience too. My Little Pony did that amazing with both G4 and now even G5. G4 like revolutionized that idea in a lot of ways. Because it's like, yeah, of course Hasbro is marketing this to kids, but Lauren Faust and the team, Megan McCarthy and everyone else who worked on it, they made sure that the adults watching with their kids and anyone who tuned in could get a kick out of it. So many of the episodes focus on and touch on some really heavy adult issues that the kids are not going to understand. But at the same time, it will help the kids kind of start to see that stuff. Stuff like racism and whatnot, which is touched on a couple times in G4. And it's like, this series of movies so far, the first movie felt like something that the kids would be fine with, but the older viewers would see the holes in and start to have the issues with. It felt like it was not only being marketed towards a young audience, but only appealing to them. From my perspective, my viewing perspective. But the second and third movie, both of them have taken a major upturn. Both of them really raised the bar for these films and started to do things that could definitely appeal towards older audiences. Especially the last one with the family issues going on in there. Like, yeah, of course, kids can understand that too, because a lot of kids do go through family issues like that. But a lot of older people watching, whether teenagers or adults, have gone through stuff like that too. And seeing a piece of media touch on that can sometimes be very cathartic. As someone who's gone through family issues, it's definitely really great to see, and I connect with the characters because of that. And as was even made a point of last time, I even connected with the father. It wasn't just the little girl. Even her father. It was made very clear that he loved his daughter very much, and that his the way he was being a little, what's the word? Not abusive. He was not abusive. But the way he was kind of ignoring her a bit and everything, there's a word for it. I just can't think of it. It wasn't ever, it never came across as mean or anything. He was never like actively trying to ignore her. It was a result of his work, which he was doing for her to a degree. He wanted to help give her a life and everything that she could thrive in. But the problem is, if you go too far with that kind of thing, you can oftentimes alienate your own children who you're trying to help in the first place, and in the end that doesn't help. So it's a complicated issue, and it's not always for the best. You kind of have to have that balance if you want to have work and everything. In his case, being a scientist, that is going to help your children be able to thrive. You still have to have a balance there in order to, pay attention to your children and everything. And luckily, that was kind of the message of the movie. That was touched on very notably. And by the end, he did find that work-life balance to be able to spend some time just hanging out with his daughter and being a father. And again, I think that's why I like the last one as much as I did, because I can connect to it. That there are aspects of it that I have gone through. Not the father part, because I'm not a parent, but excuse me. I don't know why I'm yawning so much right now. But more from the other angle. I'm more like speaking from the shoes of the child here. I've gone through that side of things, and it's hard. It's very hard. But luckily, I've been able to understand that and understand how to better myself through those experiences, even if those experiences weren't the best by any means. I just basically had to make the best of a bad situation. But yeah, I don't know what this movie's gonna really go about. I don't know what to expect from it. Again, I haven't seen like any cover or anything for this. I just know the title, Secret of the Wings. And again, based off of just that tiny bit of information, there's not a lot I can infer. I can only infer like the most basic aspect. The last movie also gave us a little more focus on Tinkerbell's friends again, while not having them be too relevant to where it like split up the attention too much and kind of took away from certain aspects. It focused specifically on one of her friends and her connection with Tinkerbell and everything, and the others were there as support roles, and that's what they should be. It allowed the main characters to still shine, but also giving the side characters something to do as well, which the second movie didn't really do as much. I think the balance it struck with that was really well done in the third film. So, hopefully we get more of that in this. Oh my goodness. I apologize so much. I don't even know. It's like I've been awake for a while by the time I'm recording this. I've already had lunch and everything. I don't know why I'm yawning so much. But either way, we're just gonna get on with this and hope for the best. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so this might be a little confusing, but I'll try to get my thoughts across here. This movie was both not as good as the last one, but also better. I know that's got to make no sense, but hear me out. There are aspects of the last one that felt more tightly wound in terms of story and everything, in terms of pacing. This one felt like there was a lot more going on. There were a couple of plot points that honestly weren't given as much focus as they should have, and it weighed it down a little bit. It felt a lot less controlled as the last film did. Um, where the last film definitely succeeded in keeping everything handled right, to where it's like, oh, you use all these characters in the right way, nothing feels out of place, none of the characters are overshadowing the main story and anything. This one, it's kind of like, I wanted so much more, for example, with the story between the two leaders and their forbidden love, and it felt like it was really glossed over, you know. Like it was just, it was brought up as this big deal, as the big reason for the separation between the warm and the winter fairies, and then it was just kind of only like focused on very briefly, like two other times maybe, when it showed the one guy's broken wing, and then they kissed at the end after everything was restored. um I'm having a hard time remembering the names. Her name is Clarion. I can't think of his name at the moment, but you know what I mean. Mallory, that's it. But yeah, you saw Mallory's broken wing when he took off his cloak after giving it to Clarion, and then again when you saw them finally kiss at the end. But it didn't really focus enough on it. I feel like if they gave that a little more time, they could have. This could have been a little better. Like this movie, the credits started rolling like at a minute and 8 seconds, and it's a minute 15 total for the runtime of including credits. I feel like if they extended it by just like maybe 10 more minutes, added in just a little bit more to the story of Clarion and Mallory and everything, and to their characters, maybe even having them have a conversation after reuniting, like getting to just talk to each other and all a little bit more, I think it would have made it work a little better. But as it is, it feels a little just tacked on there, which sucks because, as I said in the reaction, like those kind of forbidden love stories can get me really emotional and really like hooked in. Um, but because of that, and because of how things were in this one, it just really felt like it wasn't as tightly wound as the last film was. But I also say it's better than the last film because the actual like main story with Tinkerbell and Periwinkle was the best story we've had in this film series so far. The idea that Tinkerbell had a twin sister she never knew about, like the entire secret twin thing has been done in a lot of places. I mean, Gravity Falls is a huge example of that. They even make fun of the trope after the reveal of it. But it's like the way it's handled here is actually really well done. The fact that they were separate and all from the Winter Fairies because of what had happened in the past with Mallory, his wing breaking after having his relationship with Clarion and all. They were separated, and everything was just kind of kept away from each other. So the fact that one of them, after they were both born from the baby's laugh, one of them going to the warm fairy lands and the other going to the winter fairy lands, it's like it would make sense that they wouldn't know about each other, that it would be a secret twin thing. But they also throw in the idea that when their wings come together, it creates like this new kind of magic because of it, because the entire separated twin thing is unheard of, and it causes something that has never been seen before. Even even Dewey, who has written about the idea of it, has never actually seen it, by his own admission. It's something that's either has never actually happened before, or has maybe only happened once or twice in all of history. It's so unbelievably rare that it's an unheard of phenomenon. So it makes it feel special. It makes it feel interesting. And I mentioned as well in the reaction that the actual stakes are much higher in this one, and that's something that I liked with the second film that the third one didn't really go into as much. The second movie had notable stakes in it and everything, especially with what Tinkerbell was trying to do during her mission. There was a lot of good action stuff in that. And we had a little bit of that in this too, after having almost none of that in the third one. The third one's stakes were built mostly on family relationship and whatnot, which is notable, of course, but it doesn't feel as grand comparatively to, like, you know, great action and intensity. This one kind of brought it back to that, back to where the second film had done it, except instead of like this big grand adventure, this time it's more inward. It's more centered around Pixie Hollow, and we get to see how the pixie dust trees on both sides are being put in danger due to the balance of the seasons being shifted. We see that the freeze that is coming, that was accidentally created by the machine that Tinker, Clank, and what's his face made, and accidentally like kickstarted by Mallory. We see that creates the freeze that disrupts the balance of the seasons and everything, and starts to cause this big freeze to pass over. And the freeze is different from the frost, which is something I was like thinking about as I was watching, because it's like the frost is a very specific kind of fairy magic that helps encapsulate objects or whatever, as we saw with the flower, as we see with the trees and everything, and even the fairy wings at the end, that allows them to be protected underneath the frost. They retain their heat within the confines of the frost, and it allows them to survive and thrive, which is a really unique, interesting way to go about that. The freeze, however, is just pure, unadulterated cold. It comes to destroy. It's not encapsulating, it's not protecting, it's destroying. And so they use the frost to protect the tree and the other wildlife and plant life and all from the effects of the freeze, so the freeze can't destroy it. It's actually really well done. I actually really like that. Periwinkle is great. Her personality is very similar to Tinkerbell's, which is expected of twin characters, although it's not always the case, and especially not in real life. There's a lot of cases in real life where twins are very different and have very notably different personalities. And you even see it in fiction as well. Going back to Gravity Falls, obviously Dipper and Mabel are very different. They're twins, but they're very different. And if you want, like, even twins of like the same assigned birth gender, like even Ford and Stan are very different personality-wise. It's a completely separate situation, but there are twins who can be very alike and can be almost each other's complement at all points. So it's very much possible. And so showcasing it here to see that they are so similar, to even down to secretly like being into the same things. It's like, I heard of this story one time. Okay, so story time. There's this real life story. I don't know if anyone else had heard of this, but there are these twin brothers. They were separated at birth. I think they were like adopted out to different places and all, right at birth and all. And they never knew of each other. But apparently, they were into the same kind of things growing up. And in the weirdest fucking twist, they did stuff like they worked the same type of job. Their wives had the same names as each other. and then they got divorced. They both got divorced, and I think they got remarried, and their second wives also had the same names as each other. And just all kinds of huge, massive, unbelievable coincidences like that. And it's like, and they finally reunited like when they were older. Let me see if I can actually find the article on that. Twins reunite identical lives. And it was this like big thing. I think I found it. Because it was like, it was so wild. Yes, this is it. The Jim twins. Yes. Two estranged twins who led identical lives. Okay. So here we go. The Jim twins of Ohio were reunited at age 39 after, okay, so it wasn't as older as I thought, after being separated at birth. When they got to talking, they found that they had lived identical lives. Okay. Both of them were named James, or Jim for short, by their adoptive families, because they were adopted at birth. They would grow up only 40 miles apart from each other and to go on to live lives that were spookily similar. Both had developed both had beloved childhood dogs named Toy. Both of them had a dog in their childhood that had the same name, Toy. And as school children, both had a proclivity for math and woodworking, but were not good at spelling. Like, both of them had the exact same strengths and weaknesses in school. Both Jims were married twice. The first time they married women named Linda. Both of their wives were named Linda. They both divorced, and they went on to marry women named Betty. Their second wives were both named Betty. Both Jim Lewis and Jim Springer had a son, and they both gave their sons the same exact names. James Allen. The only difference was that the Allen was spelled with one L for one of them and two L's with the other. That's the only difference, but they were still both James Allen. Both Jims were heavy smokers, drove the same car, a Chevrolet, and had similar jobs in security. Jim Lewis was a security guard, while Jim Springer had been a deputy sheriff. They even took vacations at the same Florida beach. Neither man knew any of these impossible facts about their brother until Lewis, age 37, decided to try and get in contact with his twin. In 1977, he succeeded in finding contact details through an Ohio courthouse. They spoke on the phone and eventually agreed to meet. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. These two twins named Jim, who were so identical in pretty much everything. They led these lives that were so eerily identical, even in the names of the women they married, the names of their sons, their jobs, everything. It was this great huge deal. Like I saw like this big news story like all over at one point. It was being shared all around social media at one point, like a few years back or something. I guess it just made the rounds of being a popular news story again. And it's just this so wild, impossible coincidence, a series of coincidences, that it's one of my favorite stories in all of history, honestly. It's just so cool. So the idea of like these two twins who were separated at birth being even just kind of having similar personalities and being into the same stuff, like Tinkerbell and Periwinkle are, is nowhere near out of the question. If shit like that with the Jim twins can happen, like Tinkerbell and Periwinkle are completely fine. But they also had really good chemistry. Like when we saw them talking together and everything and hanging out, it's like they just clicked instantly. And it's like, oh yeah, these two are sisters. You can see it. And also, outside of the entire storyline with Clarion and Mallory, all of the other fairies that were featured in this very much felt like they were handled well. None of them overstayed their welcome. None of them like tried to steal the spotlight from the main stuff going on. There were a couple that were highlighted a little more, like the Keeper, Dewey. But all of the others, they had their small supporting roles, and that's all they needed. But like I said, the stuff with Clarion and Mallory was, it seemed like it was going to be a lot more focused on than it actually ended up being. Like when it was introduced, it felt like it was going to be like a massive deal from that point on, and they were going to constantly be bringing it up, or at least do a little more than they actually did. So I just feel like it wasn't given the spotlight and attention it deserved. Because again, I thought it was great and I thought it was a cute idea. It just could have been a little better, personally. The animation and all looked the same. Honestly, the animation hasn't really improved anything notable. So nothing really to report there. The voice acting was all good per usual. Nothing to report on that front. All of that kind of stuff was the same. Really, the story and the characters is what made this, and it is. But it's also the reason why I both say in some cases it was better than the last movie, but in some cases it just kind of wasn't as tightly written. You know what I mean? Like it could have been just a little bit better. But overall, with the main story and characters that were focused on, it was definitely the most engaging. It was the most engaging, the most interesting. I liked the story and how it was how it was delivered and all, pretty much the entire time. And the pacing wasn't too bad either. Yeah, obviously for movies that are just about an hour long, it kind of has to go through things pretty quick. But it never felt like it was rushed. It never actually felt like it was rushed. Again, outside of the subplot with Clarion and Mallory. Now, my big question is: will Periwinkle and the Winter Fairies continue to be notable characters in the next two and final two films? Because there's two more films left, which let me just make sure I got the names of them right. We have The Pirate Fairy and Legend of the Never Beast. That's my big question now. Will those characters continue to be characters going forward? They don't necessarily have to be like the big focus or anything, because obviously they got that in this movie. But I don't want them to just disappear either. I don't want the next two movies to just be about Tinkerbell and the Warm Fairies again. I don't want it to just ignore the fact that all of this happened, because this was a big deal, opening up the Winterlands to the Warm Fairies and everything, and allowing both sides to merge together again. I think that's really important, honestly. So I really don't want that to be just forgotten about. You know what I mean? I don't want it to just be ignored from here on out. So hopefully it isn't. Hopefully we get more of them. Even if they're not the main focus, I still want them to be there. I still want the Winterlands and the Warmlands to be like part of the last two movies. Do not tell me in the comments, though, if that's the case. I don't want spoilers, and I would consider that a spoiler. But in the meantime, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of Tinkerbell and the Secret of the Wings? Let me know down in the comments below, and thank you, as always, to Smurf, who donated for this film. As he's done for all of the Tinkerbell films. I'm really enjoying these. Again, they're just continuing to get better and better. And again, this one took a little bit of a backtrack on the tightly wound story part of it all, and everything, as I talked about already. But the overall main story quality and characters and all were still the best it's been so far. So again, let me know your thoughts down below. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.